So the people from the hill would wonder how could they benefit, because before they would only work by seasons and now they had to work every day and from a very early time in the day. And they even had a boss, because obviously there was someone coordinating all these jobs. Whereas the people from the irrigation areas, they said that in 5 years, their half acre or their quarter of acres, within 5 years' time that they are done paying it, those will turn to 6 hectares maybe, and then their life will be better off. So there was a big lesson here, which was the ways people could work. So when they were about to quarrel, these two areas, one day they came up to Mr. Gutson and they said, "Sir, please let us figure this problem." And group B goes to another section of the land. They said, "Okay, but how about section A?" They didn't have wells, so they could maybe have another one. And the group said, "Well, they don't have a machinery." And they said, "Well, we didn't have it first either, but they can have some." And this is the main experience, that when we put groups together, this is what can happen. When people don't share a common culture, it's hard to reach an agreement. And this is just for showing off, really, that I went from being a social outreach person to head of the cooperative to manager of one of these agencies of a rural center of farmers, which was also very interesting. And from there we moved on to the education areas. Well, talking about education, it was my time to promote a program for farmer producers. I realized the technicians would eventually leave and they would take some experience, but us farmers were sort of caught in the middle. And so, adding up all these different situations, I fostered within this foundation a program of outreach people, which would go through training for a month. They had a week of paid, a social week, and a cultural week, so that they could have a good participative diagnose. This was not an original idea. We had heard about it from doctors. We had seen this in Guatemala, and we had go through training for a month. And the challenge was to implement this. And as we moved forth, well, the first course almost failed because we thought that managers would be in the same tune, that they would all be in sync. We thought that we would have around 33 people, but then we're about 8, and in the end, 20 more showed up. And after that, as a lady from Puebla pointed out, it was very important to have a farmer promoter. And what was the difference between a farmer promoter and an institutional promoter? And she said that they were promoters 24 hours a day. And once we realized what this improvement was in promotion, if we know that we want things to run smoothly, we want things to be done the way they are, anywhere we are. And after this, when I met the people who were running the municipality development, that they were leaders of the common land, or maybe some people who were business owners. I visited one of them lately, and it was quite surprising because I noticed he had his own cheese production farm, and he. Well, in order to conclude, I would like to say that today we see collaboration in public institutions, in the civil society, and in producers. That they add up efforts and resources to support the farmers under different manners. And this is of paramount importance to beat corruption, which has taken advantage of the weakness and the lack of organization in farms. Now I say this because even if things move forward, we know that deep down there's a lot of movement that are not suitable or are not beneficial to all the groups and associations. We firmly believe that if there's any kind of competition, this is based on chipping in the best kind of solutions to the problems and towards achieving common goals and not just groups of power and corruption. As a promoter, one of our main concerns regarding satisfaction is that farmers, both women and men, acquire. This is very important to point out. Here, women are mentioned in first place. This is gender equality. So that these farmers get confidence in themselves, they reinforce their values, broaden their analysis capacity and reflection, and that their success or their failure lead them to take on new and greater challenges. Thank you very much.
Committee. As you see, this topic is kind of complicated. Awareness, development, and now it's the best moment to talk about this. Our symposium today is in the best moment. But if you are going to sleep, please just let me know about it. So, let's get started. What we have here is a definition for awareness. Please pay close attention to what the Royal Academy is defining. It's the property of the human spirit to acknowledge himself in the essential attributes and in every modification that he is experiencing himself. We are seeing several keys in here. What can we appoint as an essential attribute in human beings? The human being is incomplete. The rest of the living beings are not the same. If we compare the paw of a lion with the hand of a human being, the paw is very strong and has the right grip, and it was made for the animal to survive. If we ask ourselves, what can the human being do with his or her hand? An infinite amount of things to create, to describe, to create. And if we add up technology, the possibilities are infinite. In that sense, we are permanently being constructed. That's the interaction that feeds up this concept. And in that sense, we also have a high ability to adapt to the environment in which we live. If I take a fish out of his environment, what happens? He would die. The human being would survive somehow if taken away from its environment. Even in this space, we've developed technology to survive in water, in the space. That shows the ability of humans to survive in several different environments. This is a question. How many types of white does an Eskimo recognize? What do you think? Just one. Well, there are 70 types of white because that's the environment he lives in, and his brain develops that ability in order to survive in that environment he lives in. We do not need that ability. So our brain has not developed that ability to distinguish all the types of color in white. So that distinguishes and differentiates us. So we can develop different alternatives facing different environments and different demands within. On the other hand, we have the reflexive knowledge that implies developing competences, knowledge that are necessary to solve situations in on our daily life, generating also other alternatives to improve our life conditions. In that sense, what would the path of our well-being, implying a good handling of nature and good relationships with other humans, and the development in our abilities, and then to have in a positive way. If we are thinking about the process to be followed in order to get organized, the first thing that we must be clear of is who we are and what are we going to do things right. And then we need to be well. How can we interact in harmony, thinking about building a project all together? Because conflicts will arise, and that has to do with the appropriate handling of problems. And also, it's about positive knowledge, what we need to generate a new development process to build ourselves as persons, and as a consequence, after the positive knowledge and the positive being, sometimes we do it backwards and we go for having positively. The first thing is about the vision of the company, to have the knowledge and the presence in the positive way would give you and give us a good result in what we are building up together. The second definition of development, look at this. This is by Martia Sen, a book that is called Development and Freedom, the ability of a person in community to choose the way of life that this person values, the conditions of health and education, and also we have well-being. It's the set of opportunities for selecting and the freedom to choose. And we were talking about the plural society, and our quality of being heterogeneous is an advantage, because in that diversity we have to think how people from their experience, from their own culture, from their development would opt for a development model is convenient according to his or her own cosmovision. I would believe diversity is changing paradigms. Now it's everything about the quality of being heterogeneous, so we have to include ourselves in this. In that sense, the emphasis lies on a full exercise of our freedom of choice. So we need to build our own well-being, because the human being is always building himself up and the future life and acting in consequence. So human being is invited to act as long as we react according to instincts in the case of animals, we assume the consequences of what we do and what we don't do. Some other living beings would just react because of their instincts. And the natural environment, if we say that we have developed our ability to survive in adverse environment, what do you think is the natural environment for human beings? What would you say? Life in society. Human being, naturally speaking, is a social being. If we are beings that are built constantly, what kind of society would you like to have? In that sense, it is important to identify the abilities that we have as human beings and what constants we are facing in our lives. So the first thing that we have as an ability is our knowledge. Knowledge from our history, knowledge of what we are, knowledge of the environment we are in, knowledge of the nature of our business, deep knowledge of the market, knowledge of our competitive advantages and the way we differentiate from others so we are a more convenient option for our customers. Imagination what for? To visualize different scenarios that we might face and to be very clear on what path to follow to face those scenarios. Imagination for visualizing our direction in terms of efforts, and we have to build a vision of a common future where everybody is clear about the place we want to go and what we need to do to get there and the way to go. In that sense, we need to widen our vision about the world and to build the scenarios. And willingness for what for? To take to facts that concepts of our reality, the visions from that knowledge. It's not about visualizing dreams, it's about the real possibilities that we actually get. And in that sense, we are going to act out. So the human being, as I was telling you, is always invited to act out. What are the constants that we are facing? Change. So I would ask you something before. Well, the question just disappeared. But what is what we are living today? Are we living a season of change? A season of change? Raise your hands. Or changing the seasons. We are living seasons change. Look at this. The economists claim that this has been through long periods of time. What happened at the end of 19th century that transformed the economy around the world? The industrial era, when the country was changed, and that was through all the 20th century. Right now, we are getting into the knowledge era. And, well, I have this cell phone, and it's almost a gift. And what is the added value in here? The service, what is behind that service? Technology, what is behind technology? Knowledge. So we are entering the knowledge era. And we should think about managing not the people, but the human talent. Human talent, we all have it, such. Think about the experiences that you will have in the next couple of days because you want to modify your situation. Let's go back. And in that sense, we are facing a change that is more radical, a change of seasons. And we are facing constants that have to do with our principles and our convictions. What are the principles and convictions that are ruling out from our way of acting and behaving? And in that sense, we must be very clear and very aware of that. And on the other hand, freedom. Freedom for what? To decide from ourselves what to do facing the changes according to our principles and convictions. Now, could we control reality? No, we do not control reality. It is an independent variable that we do not control, but what can we actually control? Our action, our ability to act, to participate in that change, that transforming action to participate in the change. If we don't control it, we can do something to participate in that change, and from there we are not subjects to change. The case that the engineer was explaining earlier, that the people, the promoters, would say which way to go, and that was subject to change. What we need to do? We need to build that individual for change, the individual that is assuming in a conscious way that he or she is responsible for the action transforming his life situation or her life situation, and the change begins with ourselves. The changing the environment is uncertain, reality is more uncertain, is more intangible, generating more doubts, it's more dynamic, but we have the possibility of inserting ourselves into that change voluntarily, responsibly, and committed, executing and exercising our freedom. So we may be subject to change as well. So right now we are going to actors and factors for development. Look at this, please. In a great extent, who are playing a role in the development scheme: the state, the government, the society, and also nature. In the past, maybe we could say that is the most novel one, but we've done so much wrong that now nature is becoming a rebel. In that sense, what is in dispute between the actors, the uh, politic politics power, making decisions, steering the country, driving it, the economic power, knowledge and technology, and these are also in dispute, and each one of these dispute areas have different rules. The economic power, we should participate actively in that and to get the excess through sustainable and sustained activities. And in terms of politics, through our representation, we could incite in the politics ruled by the government. And technology and knowledge is something we require in order to develop our ability, our competitiveness in the environment. And lastly, we have the uh, human resources model, and what is the degree of maturity of each one of these actors in each territory in order to know how development is being managed. And in that sense, the question is, how could we translate the good performance of each one of these actors? The talking about the state would be measured because of the institutionalization degree, because it is necessary to rely on them. If we rely, then we are fine. If not, the function is not being met because we are not relying on the institutions. And also it's about the quality of the public policies. Just for you to have some extra information, Mexico is the second country in terms of expenses in Latin America for the rural sector. How efficient is that expense in its application in the rural development? It's something that is evident. How could we achieve that expense oriented could improve development conditions. That has to do with the degree of organizations of the society and the sense of cooperation. Because if we have a high level of pulverization in the society, the state could issue some policies pulverizing his own resources. And where would the generation of public and communitary services be? Because everyone would say, give me my share. Talking with a representative the other day, if every money given to the producers of sugar cane, and how can we take that to our consumption areas, we will be doing better because we would be generating a public good in difference to the subside that was received as pulverized. And well, that is always goes to alcohol production, talking about sugarcane. But in that case, we have an outstanding task because everybody would get the policies that they deserve, because we need to counterweight a citizenship. There is no organization ability that could make us feel as a political force that would affect or impact the other factors. And in that sense, what is the function of the market? Generating the wealth. But normally the market works from justice that reads, you give me and I give you, that has to do with empathy, with the mutual support, is totally absent. Another reflection, what happened when the development was centered in the state? Because we had Anaxa, we have Rural Bank, Conasupo, Fertimex, many institutions that were solving all our problems. And what happened? We didn't do any good. We had corruptions, the resources were wrongly used, and then it was less state and more market criteria. What happened then? Then poverty, inequity was there, and the economical powers were only benefited. And now we need a balance between society, market, and state. Everybody must be clear about their own role, because none of them and in themselves are perfect. So we should have compensation mechanisms of the imperfections that are playing a role around development. Do we have a perfect market? No, we have to generate the public policies compensating the failures of the market. The state, is it perfect? No. So the society must cooperate in order to achieve compensation for those imperfections. The same would happen with the market. So in a healthy balance between these three factors, always taking into account nature, focused on sustainability, then we can have a territorial development that is appropriate. So the task is not easy, but I would say that we cannot take for granted that this belongs to the society, because everybody must play his or her role and must be overseen by the rest of the players. It has to be monitored by the others in terms of how well they are meeting their responsibilities. But in that case, we need an organization that is consistent to have reliable institutions and the public policies, and to have corporate social